Welcome back to another flight computer video. This one is on the AN5834-1 Dead Reckoning computer by G. Felsenthal and Sons. The dating here is no earlier than 1948. We know that in 1947, the U.S. Army Air Forces became the United States Air Force, and in 1948, they drafted up a new spec for a new flight computer. And there are many improvements on this model relative to the older 5835, which oddly has a higher model number. But these are things like a whole new slide, density altitude window, higher ranges for true airspeed and true altitude. There's a Mach index number. There are drift constants here for pressure pattern navigation. And my personal favorite feature is the addition of a new index here, the seconds index, and we'll talk about that at the end of this video. So construction-wise, after World War II, the restrictions on aluminum had been lifted, so we're back to an etched aluminum body with a plastic slide. The back of the device essentially remains the same, has a new lanyard holder here, a new design, which is more sturdy relative to the sort of wire design that we saw on the 5835. And what else? Let's see. The slide itself has been extended from 80 units to 800 units, so for faster aircraft. And we also have, this slide is sort of unique, we have a small table of corrections here for air compressibility. And what's unique is on this slide, it's in the middle of the device, whereas later when we see the MB4, we'll see that at the top of the device. There were three different versions of the 5834. There was the -1, the -1A, which is what we're looking at, and the -1B. And the differences there were mostly cosmetic as opposed to the features of the device. So, all right, let's jump into a problem, and this is very much a back to basics problem. And there's a reason for this, so let's dig in. So probably the most basic question of all for a flight computer. Given a ground speed of 120 knots, how much time is required to fly something like 17.5 nautical miles? And what's a bit surprising here is that there's more than one correct answer. You might say, how is that possible? We all know that time equals distance divided by speed. Well, in this case, we've got our distance here in nautical miles, and we've got our speed in nautical miles per hour. And so when we cancel out these nautical miles, what we're gonna end up with is a time unit that's in hours. And for this short distance, you probably don't wanna express that answer in hours. So how do we want to express time is very important. And the flight computer makes this easy for us. It's easy to calculate the answer to this question in hours, in minutes, or now with the new the seconds marker, index marker, in seconds. So let's jump into that. If we wanted to calculate the answer to this problem in hours, what we would do is we would set the unit index, which is down here. This is the 1. It's a 10 on a flight computer. It would be a 1 on a slide rule, to our ground speed. So our ground speed is 120, which is represented by the 12 up here. So I'm setting the unit index to that ground speed, 120. And then along the outside of the device, I'm looking at distances. And so I'm looking right here, it's 17.5, halfway between 17 and 18, 17.5 nautical miles. And I slide on down and I have a value here. I have to keep track of the decimal points in my head, but 0.146 hours. So let's write that down, 146 hours. 0.146 hours is how long it takes to fly 17.5 nautical miles at a ground speed of 120 knots. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not how I express time on a normal basis for something that's not going to take that long. I don't think in terms of tenths of an hour. So let's calculate this in minutes. And this is what a pilot would normally do. And we're trained when we're using these flight computers to take this big speed index, set that on our ground speed. So here that's 120. And then we're going to read our answer in minutes along the outside, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So now we go to the same distance, 17.5 nautical miles. We slide on down and we can see the answer is somewhere between 8 and 9 minutes. If we follow these decimal points, looks to me like 8.75 minutes. So doing 120 knots, we can get 17.5 nautical miles in 8.75 minutes. But still, I really don't think in terms of tenths and hundredths of minutes. So there's got to be a better way to express this answer. Let's try with the seconds index. So same process, we set the second index marker, which is here on the number 36, because there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, to our ground speed, which is 120 nautical miles per hour. And from there, underneath 17.5 nautical miles, we can read our answer in seconds, which is cool. So we have 500, 510, 520, 525 seconds. It's going to take us 525 seconds to fly 17.5 nautical miles. Now I know what you're saying. That's even worse. Nobody wants to think in terms of hundreds of seconds. But there's a cool little trick here. So the inner scale of the flight computer has minutes and hours. And the relationship between minutes and hours, we all know 60 minutes in an hour, is the same as the relationship between seconds and minutes, 60 seconds in a minute. So if we want a better answer than 525 seconds here, what we would do is we would just continue to slide on down into the scale and think of this not as hours, because it's not. Now we think of it as minutes. And so now we can see that our answer, again, is between 8 and 9 minutes. And if we follow down, we can see that it's 8 minutes and 10 seconds, 20, 30, 40, 8 minutes and 45 seconds. We read that directly right there on that inner scale. So that is personally how I like to express time, minutes and seconds. And it's also second level accuracy for the answer to this question, which is plenty accurate for what we need in actual air navigation. And you can do that on an analog computer. You don't need a calculator in order to get second level accuracy. So all of this to say, we have to be really careful with our units. And I will come clean that in the last video that we did, I was not so careful with my units. In fact, I wrote something that I go back and look at now, and it was pretty silly. What I wrote in the last video was 504 divided by 284 equals 106. Well, what was I talking about? I was talking about nautical miles at the top, and down below I was talking about nautical miles per hour. And then my answer I expressed in minutes, which now that I have the units there, I guess you could say that this is okay. But what I should have written, if I was being careful with my units, was 504 nautical miles divided by 284 nautical miles per hour gives me 1.77 hours. And then I could take that hours, I could multiply that by 60 minutes in an hour, and I could have gotten my answer there of 106 minutes. But again, we don't want to express minutes in this system. We use a sexagesimal system, and so what this really needs to be is converted into 1 hour and 46 minutes. So it's our responsibility to be careful with our units, especially when we are working with slide rules and flight computers. All right, that's all for today. In our next video, that will bring us up, we'll go up to 1953, where we will meet the MB4 flight computer. And this flight computer contains a feature that I personally use on almost every single flight that I make. So if you're looking for a reason to keep carrying that analog flight computer in your flight bag, check out the next video, and thanks for watching.